Everyone, this is Pyro-is-Magic. I'm going to be trying a new style of video where I do it in a podcast style for duck hunt, and this is going to let me have more opportunity to talk longer, unedited about some duck hunt things, some longer and harder to understand things. And I think the first one I'm going to talk about is neutral, and specifically in neutral, I'm just going to be talking about setting up, like the step one to a duck hunt neutral. So you could think about the duck hunt neutral step one being just get a can up. And one thing that I see a lot of duck hunts do is that when they get a can up, they just think get space, get a can up, which is what you're supposed to do. It's fine that way. But they don't really have an idea of what can is doing in neutral. So I'd say there's about three ways can be set up, and they're just three different scenarios. Not that anyone's better than other. The first one is just you have space, so you put up a can, and that's trends to be what the duck hunt should be doing as soon as the game starts. There's space between you and the opponent, so you set up a can, and you start you're neutral that way. You can set up a can high, you can jump before you do it, you can run to the corner and you can do it, or you can just stand still and throw it out raw. The first thing you have to think about though is that, let's say we're going with the third option, we just throw it out raw and just press the B button as soon as the game starts. A can in that position, the purpose of that can's arc is supposed to be kind of an anti-air. If someone jumps in on you, the can goes right in front of their aerial drift forward. Now that's not good against all aerial drift forwards. Some characters, if they read it, they'll press a big disjoint and they'll hit can back at duck hunt as soon as the game starts, and that's why sword characters can be annoying to deal with. But generally most characters don't have that disjoint, and they have to read it too, that they have to jump and read that you press the B button and preemptively press the move to hit it back at you. That's kind of a lot, and that's not something a lot of people are going to be doing without any matchup and experience, which is what you're going to be fighting against most of the time when you're playing duck hunt anyway. But what you will see more is, we're going with that example, you just press the B button without jumping, you're on the ground, you're in one place. Another thing people will do is that they'll try to dash attack at you, and that's the one where more bad things can happen. They'll duck under can, they'll hit you, you're in disadvantage. And that generally trends to be where duck hunt will end up with a lot more matchups that I think newer duck hunts are going to struggle in. Fox will dash under it, Wolf will dash under it, Palu can invincibility and sometimes dash under it. Greninja gets probably the best dash attack out of any character on duck hunt. Mithra gets a good one. Cloud will be hit by a high can, but Cloud can also just throw a big move in that position. Ness can throw a big move in that position. But what the general point there is that when they're doing that aggressive option, 90% of dash attacks aren't safe on shield. So, and also most dash attacks aren't even safe against shield can. So when that dash attack is coming, it's going to be coming in that one specific scenario where duck hunt's not moving anywhere and he presses the can button. So because it's that one scenario where it happens, this is where a lot of duck hunts get caught off in. They have to realize that that is also a scenario they put themselves in. And their opponent, whether they read that or they just kind of force a button and they just hold forward and do that there, you can bait that. That's one of the easiest baits duck hunt can do, which is just, I'm in a position where I can pretty lazily throw a can out to reset my position, but instead I can just press nothing and then punish you out of shield. I think one way you can think about it is like Diddy's banana. Diddy has an amazing neutral with his banana, but his banana pull is very little to do nothing in neutral. It will sometimes anti-air if you pull it backwards on someone, but for the most part, a Diddy is going to run away to pull that banana, or he's going to be reversed. He's going to jump and change his air position to pull that banana, or he's going to get advantage and pull that banana first. Duck hunt's can is pretty similar. It's you just pull it out, the one time when you're standing still and you pull down on the ground, it's going to be used as an anti-air. Like, that's the initial position. And if your opponent isn't anti-airing you when they come, or if your opponent isn't going into the air when they're coming at you, if they're on a grounded approach, then don't pull can in those spots. That's how Duck Hunt gets a ton of grabs on opponent. An opponent will think, I think Duck Hunt's going to pull the can, so I'm going to dash attack in to hit the can pull. Or another thing people will do, especially this was more in Smash 4, they'll run in and they'll shield on Duck Hunt when they do a pull, which also can be a way to disrupt pulling it on the ground. In both of those scenarios, you can just read that and grab it, or you can not read it but take a more defensive position and do a dash back or just drift back, jump away and drift back. And that's kind of where Duck Hunt neutral starts, when you have those positions of setting the can. If you're going to set it on the ground, then that's kind of the set play that's going to happen. That's kind of the scenarios you're going to see a lot. And what I see a lot of new Duck Hunt players do is they don't even consciously realize that that's a position that's even happening constantly over and over in the game, and they're just losing to the same dash attack or the same run and shield over and over and over again. And you're thinking, the opponent isn't like forcing that to happen because they're a top tier. The opponent's just doing options that you can just grab or you can just read pretty easily, because there's not a lot of different scenarios that are happening there. So that kind of leads to a bigger idea with Duck Hunt, and that is because Duck Hunt can control so much of the match with his projectile positions, the Duck Hunt player has to be I wouldn't say the better player, but the more spatially aware player of what's going on in a match, and be able to break patterns very frequently, which is something that is very disruptive against an opponent. You know, being able to break patterns, being able to get your opponent used to one position and creating a new one off of it. But it's also difficult for Duck Hunt players to do as well, because they're breaking their own patterns. And in a game like Smash Ultimate, where people are so used to button mashing that's safe on shield, a lot of the time people just press the same buttons in the same spots over and over again, and they get away with it all the time. Duck Hunt is very much an anti-meta character that can stop a lot of that from happening, but you have to be as knowledgeable and adaptive and flexible to get the most off of it in that way. And that's part of why Duck Hunt is such a difficult character to learn for so many people, because you're kind of if you're just new at the game and you want to play Duck Hunt, you're already trying to play a character that's doing something that most Smash characters can't do, as well as trying to play on a level that I would say even the lowest level and the mid level of Smash players aren't fully adjusted to yet, and that's pattern breaking and mix-ups. That type of level of play is what's going to start being more indicative of higher level of play, and that's kind of a base level of play you already want to have with Duck Hunt before anything really starts. So that's going to be the conclusion for part 1 of this, and I will slowly get back to you on the second part. Okay, now for part 2 of talking about setting can, and we're going to talk about setting can in disadvantage. So the main thing I'd say about setting a can in disadvantage, or let's just say not disadvantage, but setting a can in a corner, that's actually what we're going to talk about. One thing I see a lot is that a Duck Hunt player gets put in the corner. They get put in the corner and they don't have a can out so they can reset the can. But oh shoot, they're in the corner, their opponent's next to them, they have stage control, and if they get their can pull red, then they can especially die right now. So what to do? One novice and one very jumpy idea that a lot of Duck Hunts go for is roll out, jump, use a neutral air dodge to drift out, double jump out, you know, burn your escape resources super quickly to try and scramble out of the corner. Some Duck Hunts even take the super aggressive route where they say dash attack out of the corner or grab out of the corner or rising aerial out of the corner. And obviously all those things have a place, time and place for when they're going to be the right option or not, or when they're going to be a good option or a smart option or a read. But two options usually come to mind in that corner when you're in the corner in that position. One is shield, and the other is to just throw a can out. But we already established that just throwing a raw can out is, if that gets read, and that's usually a button that duck hunts are going to press when they're scared, they're going to lose for it. You're going to get hit by a F smash by like Min or something, or I don't know, someone's going to dash attack you with that kills. The bad stuff is going to happen to you in the corner if you just habitually throw a can out there. So let's say we go for a shield. One thing that duck hunts don't evaluate in, not risk reward, but just risk and survival, just to survive and get out of the corner in that position, a lot of duck hunts don't consider the fact that, well, what if you get grabbed in that corner? Most characters can't kill with a forward throw, and unless you're at like really high percents, getting forward thrown off stage, you then get to play, you know, the 50-50 of are they going to edge guard me or not. But let's just say you're not at very high percent, they don't go for a super aggressive edge guard, and you just reset to the ledge. Now, is the ledge a better position for duck hunt than being in the corner? Well, having your feet on the stage is nice and all, but sometimes you're gonna get thrown off. So the decision here was that, do you take a super aggressive, not aggressive, but do you take a super panic option to get out of the corner by burning resources immediately, something that's a lot easier to read? Or do you just stay in shield the whole time and say, well, if they grab me and throw me off stage and I go back to the ledge, we're going to play the whole corner situation again. It's just I didn't panic immediately. I'll just deal with the next sequence where I have to get back to stage from the ledge. And something that people don't realize about this is that a lot of people, or a lot of players, want their opponent to be greedy in the corner. They want to see a habit be pulled out, or a crazy defensive option, or a crazy risky option to get out of the corner immediately, because those are easy to read and those get punished super hard. That's why that's why the joke online is, lol, this guy rolls out of the corner every time. Well, that happens offline too, except it's not a roll out of the corner, it's usually a jump out of the corner or a burst option out of the corner. That happens a lot. And those are also similarly easy to read and easy to punish as well. And there's another thing about taking the route where you just shield everything. So let's say now that you're just shielding. You're just saying, I'm not going to give you any panic option. I'm just going to sit in the shield. I don't even have a can up or any projectiles up. I'm just duck on in the shield with not that great out of shield options. So let's say that they don't want to go for the grab because they're like a fox, or they're a character that doesn't get much off of a forward throw or a grab in that situation. They could potentially overcommit on your shield. They really want you to press something, so they get impatient. They press something extra on your shield. They throw their good position because they want to force you to panic. You don't panic. They overextend, and then you can get out of the corner that way. That is something that does happen. And that's something that you can build up kind of as a idea against some more aggressive players. Against some more passive players, they might be like, all right, I'm going to take a step back, and I want you to roll in, or I want you to try and jump past me, and I'm going to just cover that preemptively, or I'm just going to passively see if you do it. And then you don't. And then they give you some breathing room just tiny bit of breathing room to help you get out of the corner. Now, the players that do that, be careful when you see that happen, because you might think, oh, they gave me extra room to breathe to get out of the corner. How bad on them? I was in a bad position and they kind of loosened their grip on it. The players that are capable of doing that knowingly are usually also the ones that are going to be baiting you for something later, or they're going to be seeing how you respond to them backing off and be like, all right, the next time you think I'm going to do that, I'm going to kill you for it. So, a passive line can lead to other passive lines from another player, and those can get more aggressive as things happen, but that's more layers built on top of reads. But let's go back to the more simpler line where someone just says, oh, he's shielding in the corner, I'm just gonna grab him for it. Well, sure, a grab there is bad, but you also have to think about it. Grabs are pretty committal in this game. So if you are showing your opponent a lot of shield in that position, and they just default to grab because they just want you off stage and they want to kill you as fast as possible, then you can start reading that grab attempt, because you're showing the defensive option that usually only gets beaten by grab, and you really, really want them to commit to that grab, and then that's when you can start reversaling someone out of the corner. But you don't do that reversal immediately. You have to at least show them that you're going to be shielding. You have to make them think you're going to be shielding first. And another one I think that ends up happening is, or let's go back to also the position where they get the grab, they throw you off stage, and we reset the ledge. Duck Hunt has space to set up off stage. Like, it's not that great, but you get thrown off stage and you can put a gunman down, or you can then set your can off stage, or sometimes you even have enough space to throw a clay pigeon back at stage, and you cover the ledge that way. One thing to think about is that position, that space that you get off stage to, let's say, ping a can overhead to cover your own roll get up later on, you don't have that space when you're just shielding in the corner. And it's also not a great idea to try and get that space by double jumping off stage to set something. But your opponent can give you that position by them just throwing you off stage. So you think about it, you could have jumped out of that corner, you could have died for a panic option, but you took a really safe line. You still get punished for it because they grabbed you. But now that you get to set a can, set a gunman, set projectiles that are cover ledge and can help cover your get-ups, you're in a better position than you were by being thrown off stage. Them throwing you off stage helped you get a better position. And this is not an idea that a lot of people really pick up on. It's not something that a lot of people think about, but some characters are just better on the ledge than they are shielding in the corner. And Duck Hunt is in some ways a character that's going to be better on the ledge than shielding in the corner. Now, granted, he has to have enough time to set up a can, but that's a position your opponent can help give you. And that's something that I think a line that Duck Hunt should take. You know, should I really try and burst my way out of this corner, or should I take a more passive route and willingly get tossed off stage to set up for next time? It's something to think about, and it does give you a lot more options and a much better survivability and disadvantage state by choosing honestly which way you're going to let your opponent hit you, because you can't stop everything. That's something that I think a lot of people get too concerned about, trying to win every single position even when you're in disadvantage. But taking the route that gives you the best disadvantage for your character as possible is a pretty good one. So that's what I have to say about pulling a can in the corner. Consider the line where you let yourself get sent off stage willingly and try and force someone to grab at you. Try and force more aggressive players to get impatient when they're in an advantage state against you, but also be wary against the more patient and more read-based players that are going to be noticing you if you try and do that. So this is going to be part 3 about setting cans, and this one is going to be about setting cans in advantage. So I'd say the main line here is going to be something like you won neutral and you can put a can down. So sometimes you just win neutral and you don't really have a way to get really close to your opponent and like continue a lot of good pressure on them. Duck Hunt's not a very good chase down character. He's only really good if he's stacking a bunch of projectiles on someone when he's going in. So one way to think about it is that instead of a direct line, like let's say you're playing Mithra, you win advantage state, and then you keep holding towards them because you have sword moves and a ton of speed to keep resetting that advantage state over and over and over again. Duck Hunt can take a more passive idea where he wins advantage once and then he says, well, I don't have a clear advantage state. It looks like it reset to neutral, but what actually is going on is Duck Hunt then can get an implied advantage. Duck Hunt can win neutral, get an advantage state, and then say, I'm going to put a gunman or a can down, and now I may not be directly pressuring you or in your face before you even landed and forcing you into a new defensive option. We're back in neutral, but we're back in neutral and I'm the one set up and you're in a defensive position against me still. And that's really good. You just keep an implied advantage for a really, really long time. And so one of the ways that part of that implied advantage happens is, well, what should can do when you're trying to push that implied advantage on someone? So one thing that will happen is that someone is in the corner and you're Duck Hunt and you're sitting outside of that corner and you say, well, I'm gonna press the can. I'm gonna just press the B button and I'm gonna throw a can at them. Sure, they could burst out of the corner and their burst out of the corner could hit you for pulling can in that position, but they're in the corner, they're gonna be shielding, they're gonna be trying to be defensive as the priority here first. There are two things you should think about. The first one is not even thinking. It's, let's say that they got scared or they try to burst when you threw that can and the can cut them off and the can hits them and you win neutral again. Fine, you just win neutral again. The can hit them. Nothing to think about. Just do that again. But let's say that that happened because they were holding in towards can because they were trying to be really aggressive to get out of the corner, or aggressive to get out of that implied disadvantage state. That's fine. Just reset to advantage again, or to like an advantage neutral. I can't really put a good explanation for it. The other thing is that, well, let's say that they don't want to lose. They don't want to be put in a worse disadvantage that easily, so they just hold away from can. They're like, I don't want to keep getting hit by your projectiles. I'm gonna start holding away from them. I'm gonna get my feet on the ground. I'm gonna shield them, and we're gonna try and hard reset neutral that way. What Duck Hunts have to understand is that decision to hold away from you, from your opponent holding away from you, is still implied advantage is for the Duck Hunt. The opponent conceded more space for the Duck Hunt to give the Duck Hunt more space to put projectiles in. So let's say Duck Hunt wins advantage, she puts a can out, the opponent doesn't want to deal with the can, so they hold away. Cool. I can now put a gunman down, and now I have the gunman and the can both stacked together in neutral. And I'm adding more pressure to what's going on, and I'm not even putting myself in a risky position. What a lot of Duck Hunts fail to do is that they'll get that implied advantage going, and then they burn it immediately. They're like, I now have a can on my opponent. Let's get the can popped on their shield, try to grab their shield after the can hits them. Let's go in immediately. Oh shoot, I'm getting reversaled. Nothing stacked up well. Why was that so easy for the opponent to get out of? It was easy for the opponent to get out of because the Duck Hunt, without any time allotted, went directly in after getting that implied advantage. Implied advantage doesn't mean you can just hold forward and win neutral again and force your opponent to constantly burn disadvantaged resources. They'll get good reversals on you. They'll have reversals out of shield. They'll have, they can just space a big disjointed F tilt or big disjointed rising aerials to deal with all the projectiles and you yourself running at them to come at you. But the main line that you should be looking for there is that you got the option where your opponent held away and they try to reset by shielding away from you. When you get that position, all you really need to do is keep them in that shield in that position. You don't move can to pop it on their shield as fast as possible at that point. You don't run in immediately to try and grab them at that point. You just get close enough to them so that if they try to roll in or they try to jump towards you, you can punish them on reaction. The goal there is that you have set a good position for yourself. You force your opponent into shield, And now you can just wait around for however long you want. Like, you literally can wait around until can will naturally explode itself, because that whole time you're still in an implied advantage. So I think what you have to realize there as the duck hunt is that when you're in that position, that's actually when you should be patient on your advantage state. You don't have to do anything. If there is one video I'd like to talk about, it's a video made by Mango. I'll link it in the description. And it's an old video, and it doesn't even talk about Duck Hunt, and it doesn't even talk about Smash Ultimate. It's Mango talking about Melee Falco. And what he has to say about Melee Falco is that he made a video talking about the video was mainly just him talking about using Falco lasers in neutral. And it pretty much was that when you are using Falco's lasers in neutral, you get to decide how the pacing of the neutral. Do you laser and do you go in? Do you laser or do you back away? But what the really bad Falcos do is that they laser and they go in. No thought. I press laser wins neutral, I go in, I can start hitting your shield. The good Falcos can laser and then choose to go in or not. And that's kind of the really important decision here. It's your choice to go in when you have that implied advantage with your cannon and your gunman. You don't have to go in. You can just let those projectiles hit their shield and get new ones up, like Falco shooting, just staying away from his opponent and shooting more lasers. Or you can go in, you can get those projectiles, you can go in on them. Or there's another one, you can get those projectiles and then you can fake going in on them and then read options of what your opponent does out of the corner. Really, the important thing about all of that is that what you have there as the Duck Hunt player is you are gaining knowledge for free. You just have the winning position to get knowledge on your opponent for free. Even good players, even the best players in the world, will have to concede information to you by how they deal with that position. And that lets you build up reads, that lets you build up habits and all these different ideas, because you get this implied advantage state and your opponent is forced into shield, or your opponent is forced to deal with the potential of Duck Hunt coming at them. And this is really where the ideas of aggressive Duck Hunt play comes from. It comes from this idea that, you want advantage, you throw your projectiles, you have your projectiles head towards your opponent. They could aggressively try and hit back at you, which is usually a typically American thing. That's why Raito wins a lot. People will just non-stop try and fight their way out of disadvantage when they're not in a good spot and they keep getting hit by projectiles over and over again. Or there's a more passive idea, which is, I'll just shield these projectiles and I'll hold away from them. As the Duck Hunt player, you're the one that gets to watch all of that happen and figure out which of those two things your opponent likes to do. Or if they can choose a third thing, which is an in-between the two of them, and try and mix you up on that. You can also watch that happen because you're away from your opponent. You don't have to go in. You are a full roll length or 2 roll lengths away from them. You can react to whatever's going to happen, to whatever happens in that position, and you can build reads off of it. That's where, the idea that Duck Hunt can get so many grabs because he can force people into shield. The fact that you can get so many grabs also means you have all kinds of other things you can do, just based off of the threat of winning neutral off of a grab. So many double jumps, so many options out of shield, so many options in burst options can be forced by a Duck Hunt that just waits while a can is close to their opponent. And that's kind of the position you have to think about. You get an advantage state where can is heading towards your opponent, and you have the option to just hit their shield with that can and throw out a new can, but that new can's not going to be next to your opponent. That new can's going to be close to you, and so that gives them space to make a new decision without you pressuring them. Keeping cans close to the opponent and doing nothing with them is one of the scariest things that a Duck Hunt can do, and that's kind of the one of the two goals that I mentioned earlier, that of what you want your cans to do an advantage. You either want to hit them for drifting in, or you want them to stay next to them for drifting away. And you get to choose, and it's not your choice really. It's just responding to whatever the opponent does. But you get to choose whatever decision happens after that if your opponent is the one drifting away. You can overextend as much as you want. You can play as passive as you want. You can mix between the two. You can bait things. But all of that, the whole point of all of that is that you can now force your opponent to concede information to how they want to deal with your projectiles. And all of that just happens from being a little more patient and not immediately letting your projectiles pop on your opponent's shield. Because that's not something that Snake can do. Snake can throw grenades at different times, but Snake can't control when the grenade pops. Samus can't control the speed of the charge shot changing midway through. Duck Hunt can't control his gunman, but the gunman is so delayed that Duck Hunt gets to put himself in whatever position he wants after setting it, that he's still implying some kind of pressure on the opponent because the gunman is assisting whatever the Duck Hunt's doing. The can is assisting whatever the Duck Hunt's doing. So much of Duck Hunt's best positions he can get just stem from that close range position where you're close enough to dash grab them or to roll cancel grab them, and they can't fully respond to you as they would want to normally because there's a can on their shield. And that all the mix-ups that can happen in that position are primarily dictated by Duck Hunt. Like, you get to control what happens there. That amount of control is not a Smash thing, which is why I was talking about how Duck Hunt doesn't play like a lot of other Smash characters. The closest thing to that is Sephiroth having his side B move, where that move forces something to happen eventually. But even that move's, a lot slower than how fast Can is working on the opponent. And the fact that Duck Hunt is controlling the can still while all of this is going on, that's something that's for other fighting games. Like, other fighting games might have mechanics like that where, in this scramble situation, you have this implied advantage that can control what's going on. Most Smash characters can't do that, and that's really where a lot of the value and a lot of the high-level play of Duck Hunt is coming from. And even some high-level Duck Hunts don't take time to really remember that they can do that. They'll just stick to a habit of, all right, I get this position, I shield, I get this position, I go in. They'll get that repeated positions that I was talking about, and they already have an idea in their head of what they want to do. But the fact that you can build up a read on any opponent you want, or you can just react to whatever your opponent does in response to this, is really where high-level play comes from Duck Hunt. So all of that's fine and dandy, but I'd like to at least talk about this one last thing when it comes to throwing cans in advantage. And this is pretty much sometimes you can throw a can in an advantage state and you're thinking this is perfect, but you are dealing with a matchup, the very few, where your opponent is going to be reversaling you for throwing a can in advantage. And that's usually something like a counter, a reflector, some stupid fast move, or a piercing projectile. Let's say we go with Falco, because Falco has his big reflector that he throws at you that it hits can just goes right back at Duck Hunt and pops him. Now you have to remember the position where we're all of this position that we're talking about is when we're throwing a can in advantage. Like, we're the one that is dictating the pace of the match here. The Falco that thinks, oh, the Duck Hunt that gets, dumb and tries to throw can at me, I get to laser him and hit him for a ton of damage and I'm just winning the game. Part of that pattern breaking you need to be able to do with Duck Hunt is just say, I'm just not going to pull the can. I'm in advantage. You're a slow character. You don't have good burst options against me. I'm going to just not throw the can. And so their decision then is, oh, so they now have to react to you throwing a can, which is a lot harder to do. There's a lot more commitment to that by trying to react to you pulling a can. And if they're not, since most people aren't reacting like that, they're just throwing it up preemptively, you get to punish for them for preemptively throwing out a crazy move that tries to stop can. That happens as well in a lot of projectile wars, like Ivysaur trying to disrupt a can because he can throw a side B that pierces can. Well, then just read the side B. It has a ton of ed lag. Or let's say you're fighting a Bayo and the Bayo's trying to just bullet arts your can to deal with it. Well, hit the Bayo for using bullet arts. They don't cover her at all. So those kinds of positions are, I'd say, kind of like the matchup specific versions of, you could throw the can here, but you think your opponent's going to reversal it. Your opponent thinks that they're a good player because, oh cool, I can throw one button at Duck Hunt and that automatically wins me the matchup because the Duck Hunt will always press B there. And then you don't press B and you win neutral for it and you get them on the ledge and then you ledge trap them from 0 to 100% and you 3-stock them and then they think, well, I got cheated. Like that happens a lot. It happens because Duck Hunt primarily should be a pattern breaking character that especially breaks his own patterns. And with how, I would say, poor a lot of people consider matchups they don't know in Smash to be, one button wins it, I don't have to think about anything else. The Duck Hunt player has to be the one coming into those matchups with at least the knowledge to know, well, if I at least think I'm dealing with someone that thinks they have a one button win condition against me, then I at least know the basic counterplay against that. Because there's Duck Hunts that struggle because they don't even consider the fact that, you know, I don't really have a neutral outside of pressing B every time here. Well, then just don't press B. And now all of a sudden the Falco matchup is winning. Now all of a sudden the Ivysaur matchup is fine. Now all of a sudden you're beating characters that are trying to hard reversal you from across stage because all you're doing is not setting your projectile when they think you're going to do it. And that throws a lot of people off. So that's part 3. I think I've covered most of what I wanted to talk about when setting can. There is still some ideas about, you know, tricky setups like B reversing and wave bouncing when you set cans, but those are mainly for just positioning things. And at least in terms of positioning for can, the nice thing about can is that the initial position of can really doesn't matter. You get to move that thing around pretty conveniently everywhere you want. So that's what makes Duck Hunt very flexible compared to some other characters. Some other characters have to run all the way where they want to put their projectile, put the projectile there, and then get that position. And by the time all of that happens, the opponent already just walked away from it or they jumped away from it. Duck Hunt can kind of just pull a can from anywhere and say, I can put this cannon anywhere on the stage, anywhere I want on the stage, above the stage, below the stage, on the other side of the stage, and he can do that relatively quickly. So that's why having space with Duck Hunt matters so much. Duck Hunt with space can get projectiles anywhere, can get the can anywhere with just enough space. So that's also part of why you shouldn't be going in immediately every time when you win a neutral with Duck Hunt, because you win a neutral, you get the space to do whatever you want with can. And when you can do whatever you want with can, why not take the line that's the hardest and most confusing for the opponent to deal with? So that's part 3 of the video. Thanks for listening, and I'll try and see if more people want content like this, and if next time it could be more people talking than just me. Goodbye.